I am an extremely passionate and committed human services professional who possesses an in-depth working knowledge of the psychological and sociological aspects of human development. I consider myself to be a cognitive behavioral specialist, believing that making a change in how one thinks brings about a change in what one does. Many shy away from therapy because they feel their situations are either unique or they are fearful, embarrassed, or ashamed to let others know they need help. SciSpot is my way of corralling pertinent personal, professional, and academic information on understanding human development in one place for all to access privately and even share with others. My personal mission statement is, I am driven by divine precepts and an undying passion to facilitate change in the lives of others. What's yours? Let SciSpot guide you through your healing and provide you with many other ways of becoming better today than you were yesterday. Come on in and join.
And good morning, everybody. Welcome to SciSpot. I'm your host, as always, Sabir Aleem. Great day, beautiful day, another day above ground. So I'm truly thankful for this blessing. And I'm certainly not one of those holier than thou kind of people, but I'm a believer. I conduct myself as a servant to the best of my ability. But most importantly, I understand the significance of this day. So I try to do productive things in the course of my day. Try to make sure I do something to extend myself to other people and to be kind and loving, to other people. And last week we were pretty much talking about childhood trauma and looking at some of the aspects of life in the womb. And I shared my experience of some things that took place when I was younger and how those things affected me emotionally in terms of bedwetting, because bedwetting is something that goes on with a lot of children and it's not talked about often, simply because it's embarrassing for the child. There's feelings of guilt and shame that happen for the child. Now, how the parent deals with the bedwetting is a whole different thing, because I know as a child, my bedwetting was met with a lot of frustration and anger, and I was labeled as being, just lazy, and my mother had to get me up in the middle of the night, but even getting me up in the middle of the night to get me to the bathroom really didn't change much, because if you don't have to go, you just don't have to go. And when people don't understand things, they do the best they can to bring resolve to certain things. And sometimes seeking to bring resolve with bad information is more harmful. Is more harmful and more impactful upon that child's self-perception as years go on. So when the child comes into adulthood and they're faced with similar situations, and not necessarily bedwetting, but any situation where they had a struggle and the parent dealt with that challenge of the child in a manner that was not productive. It didn't bring forth any positive outcomes, and the only outcomes that were there were very negative ones. So it's important to understand what happens when you do anything, when you say anything to a child. We have to begin to look at what we're doing. We have to be. We also have to learn how to seek help, and that was one of the things that I was beginning to talk about in the last segment, is that we don't seek therapy. People seek resolve for their challenges within themselves, and you can't keep going to yourself for the solution to certain dilemmas, because if you're the problem and you continue to seek up here in the pterodome, I often call it, you seek solution from up there in the pterodome, you're only looking in the same places. You can't go beyond your mind, right? Because your mind is there. Your mind encapsulates all your being. So if that's where you're going for the information to bring resolve to something, well, you first have to have an understanding of what it is you're looking for. What it is you're looking for. If somebody tells you go out into that field out there and find the swan's nest, because it's, for those of you who don't know, it's like a natural reserve out here. But you don't, first of all, you have to understand, where do they live? Do they live in shrubbery? Do they live in the brush? Do they live in high grass? Do they live in the trees? Where do they live? Right? You don't know where they live. Somebody just told you to go find it. And that's what we do to ourselves. When we find ourselves in certain dilemmas, good morning sis, good morning Troy. When you find yourself in certain dilemmas, you go right up here. You don't go to somebody else and ask somebody else, because the other person doesn't have the information. What therapy does is it guides you towards the crevices of your own mind. In your own mind. That's all therapy is. Therapists don't change your life. I don't have the power to change anybody's life. Hell, I barely have enough power to change my own, but I don't do that by myself. So therapists are guides. Therapists, lead you in the direction of those areas within. Those areas within, because you have to find them. And this goes back to childhood trauma, right? Everything that happens from the point of conception throughout the course of its life is reserved in the confines of the mind, right? And as we get older, recalling those things becomes more and more of a challenge. And people often attribute it to old age. Like our recall, yes, things begin to slow down as we get older. That's obvious. But the mind, right, that has the responsibility of placing these things, these memories, in different parts of our mind, right? The body, the human body does it on its own. So the mind is doing work while we think we're doing it, but there are signals from the brain that go to the mind to do this work. The human being is just so magnificent. Like we take for granted our existence. I mean, just our human existence. We lose sight of that so often, right? So when you have all those things that resist within you, right, and you try to find ways of resolve, well, that's what you do in your adult life, because that's what this subject matter is about. It's about the impact of childhood trauma on adult relationships, on adult life. Because that's all we're really doing. We're growing, because that's the natural order of the human development. So we're growing. We're getting taller, we're getting shorter, we're getting fatter. Some of us are leaning closer to the ground as we get older. Some of us are standing up straight as we get younger. But, when you look at memory recall and you look at the human being and how the human body is designed, you can begin to fathom its creation. Because once you do that, then you're saying you understand and you know God, and therefore you can be, that's what we have going on today, isn't it? We have man trying to play God in so many ways. So when we look at these things about our makeup, and we often forget about our childhood. And you will hear people say over and over and over again how resilient children are. How resilient children are. We're all resilient. Our creation is as such. It's not just children. Right? And people say when things happen in front of a child, well, as they grow older, they'll move past it because they're so resilient. Not if they don't have the right direction. The thing about being able to move past things is that you have to have somebody in your environment that is who is guiding you through. You don't just get through it, right? Again, that natural part of protecting self, that happens. But protecting self within the mind is just like putting a wall up. You become oblivious to it. You move on in your daily actions. But your spirit has not moved on. Your psyche has not moved on. Because it can't. It just continues to do what it does. And if you think about it for a minute, there are times when I've been really, really tired and driving, and I know I fell asleep at the wheel, but somehow or another I still make it to the destination. No, I wasn't drunk, wasn't high, but there's those moments where, like fatigue. You know, you just drive and drive and drive and drive, and you know you done blacked out for at least every bit of 5-10 seconds, and you're still on the road. And like I've come to in the real time, and look around, you're like, damn, I'm still alive because I'm seeing traffic still going by, and I know I went to sleep. But the subconscious kicks in. See, that's why we have a conscious and an unconscious, which is the subconscious of self. Right? There are things that reside within the subconsciousness, and you know, those are things that we don't think about. But that's that part. That's where that trauma lives. Trauma lives in the subconscious. Trauma lives in the unconscious. Right? Because there's a lot of areas, complexities, because we're very complicated as people, as human beings. We're very complicated, and we don't seem to understand it either. But, you know, so all those things stay there forever. Forever. Now, I want you to couple that with the id. And for those of you who have not seen my videos on the id, the ego, and the superego, the id is that part of the human being that never changes. From the point of conception, right, all the way through to death, the id stays in its same condition. The id is that part of self which is childlike, immature, irresponsible, totally self-centered, right? All of those things. Narcissistic, arrogant, right? All of those things. The id wants what it wants, and it wants it at any cost. At any cost. It takes the individual hostage if allowed to. So when people use the term egotistical, they're using it wrong. Id is the part of self that is destructive. The ego is the part of self that brings balance, that has conversation with the id, and tells it, hold on, you're about to hurt somebody's feelings. We can get this another way. No, you don't have to go about it that way, but the id is so powerful. The id is so powerful that it often dominates us if we allow it to. Because then there's this superego, which is morality, which is our values and our belief system. So it's always a balancing act. So if you take that part of self, you take trauma, and you put the two together, it's terrifying. Yeah. It's terrifying. If unmanaged. It's terrifying. Let me go to this site on, because there's a couple of sites in the morning. So this is a site on spiritualityhealth.com. And it's an article by Michelle Rosenthal. And the article is dated June 10th, 2014. And it's titled, How Childhood Trauma Affects Adult Health. Now, you're going to listen to this, and if you are a person of color, specifically black, listening, viewing this show, I want things are going to stand right out when I read the things off of this list. So this was a research that was done about adverse childhood experiences, and the study was conducted from 1995 to 1997, and it examined the link between childhood trauma and the likelihood of developing medical conditions as an adult. A collaboration between the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and Kaiser Permanente Health Appraisal Clinic in San Diego, the study canvassed 17,000 health maintenance organization patients. Now these are HMOs, this is medical coverages, and patients willing to offer extensive information about childhood experiences of neglect, family dysfunction, and abuse. More than half the respondents reported at least one category of childhood trauma, and a quarter of them reported more than two. Listen, folks, I also talked about last week how, I used to think that I was unique, and a lot of us think we are unique. We may be unique in terms of the individualization of the traumatic experience, But that experience many others have had. It's just your individual experience, right? Listen, the study results released in 1998 were staggering. The researchers admitted feeling stunned. For the first time, a study proved that childhood adversity can create an early process of inflammation and cellular aging that can, among other ill effects, shorten a lifespan by almost 20 years. And here's the list. We learned that traumatic childhood experiences represent significant risk factors in adulthood. 4, now here's the list. Alcoholism, drug abuse, depression, attempted suicide, smoking, poor self-related health, sexual promiscuity and transmitted disease, severe obesity, ischemic heart disease, I hope I pronounced that correctly, cancer, chronic lung disease, skeletal fractures, liver disease, stroke, diabetes, autoimmune disease such as lupus and multiple sclerosis, chronic fatigue syndrome, peptic ulcers. Just think about it for a minute. Now I can tell you I can take about 4 of those things off that list. 4 of those things off that list regarding myself. 4. Right? Now just think about it. Now I want you to also do this. I want you to go to the CDC website, because I'm going to take you to the CDC website in a minute. And I want to show you, right? Because when I began this conversation on this particular page, I was talking about looking at it from the perspective of health issues that blacks are affected with in comparison to others. Because another thing that it ties into, and we hear about this on a regular basis, we hear about resources, especially when it comes to food, healthy foods. Let me go here for a minute. Okay. So now this is from the CDC website, right? This is from cdc.gov. The experts. And this is on an article on child nutrition facts, right? Healthy eating in childhood and adolescence is important for proper growth and development and to prevent various health conditions. All right, so let's stop there for a minute. So we're looking at trauma, and remember we talked about the natural environment, right? And the natural environment not being out there, that is a natural environment. My natural environment is the home I live in. It's the home I live in. So that means everything around me, my parents, my siblings, any other family members who may live there, you know, in-laws, all those things, that's part of my natural environment, right? Now, the other thing that's part of my natural environment is what's in my refrigerator. Right? What's in my refrigerator? What's in my cupboards? Right? We have to look at those things because this is part of our development. Because if I'm not eating right, I'm not feeling right, automatically I'm not acting right. And we have to understand that. If you have a cold, think about it. When you're congested and you're coughy and sneezing and all those things, do you feel like being bothered? Absolutely not. You may go to work because you have to, right? But you're not feeling real good. You don't feel at peak performance. You don't feel at peak performance, right? And if you don't take care of it, it lingers longer. And some people use a variety of things. Some people use garlic and honey and tea. And some drink ginger ale. Some just believe in plenty of rest and an aspirin to keep the headache and body aches down. There's a variety of things that people use. And everybody comes up with all kind of ways of what works for them and thinking it may work for you and make the suggestion for you. And sometimes it will work for you and sometimes it won't. But at the end of the day, the focus here on is diet. is diet. And people think that that has nothing to do with the spirituality or the psyche of the individual. They think that it's only a physical deficit, but it's far more than that. The 2015-2020 Dietary Guidelines for America recommends that people aged 2 years or older follow a path of healthy eating that includes the following: a variety of fruits and vegetables, right? Whole grains. When I didn't even, it was years before I even knew what a whole grain was. I had to go to a nutritional workshop. I think it was at Essenes in Philly. Up in Philly, it's a whole food kind of environment. It was a nutritionist there. I went and talked to and learned some things. Fat-free and low-fat dairy products. This has to do with digestive system. A variety of protein foods. What is a protein food? Right? What is protein? Even talking about protein food, what is protein? Right? Oils, right? Flaxseed oil, all different kind of oils and things like that. What we look at, hell, we came up with lard, right? Lard was in your food, lard was on your skin, lard was in your hair, lard was everywhere. Right? So let's go to now. If you just reflect back to a minute to the list of the things about a traumatic environment. Now, benefits of healthy eating: high blood pressure. Right? We talked about that being a problem, and the other list that we looked at: heart disease, diabetes, cancer, osteoporosis, iron deficiency, dental care, cavities. Right? Now look at the list. That the one that I just read to you from the spirituality website. And if I don't remember exactly what website it was, but if you go back into the footage, because you'll be able to get a copy of this on my YouTube, Daddy's Right Here YouTube educational station, so you can go back. But compare the list. These are the areas, right? The first list that I read to you were areas that may be affected in adult health. Then you put it here. Now, if that's the area, based on a stressful environment, based on a traumatic environment, based on trauma and all these things, this list over here tells you that if you have these things as far as diet, that this is a benefit and this is healthy eating. So then the consequences of a poor diet. A poor diet can lead to energy imbalance, eating more calories than your body uses, and can increase the risk of becoming overweight or obese. Obesity was mentioned as one of the things that they found affected adult life, right? Come on. A poor diet can increase the risk for lung, esophageal, stomach, colorectal, and prostate cancers. Come on, folks, follow me here, because this is all tied in. Because we have to change the environments we're bringing our children up in. We have to, right? Hunger and food insecurity, i.e. reduced food intake and disrupted eating patterns, is due to a lack of household income and other resources for food, might increase the risk for lower dietary quality and undernutrition. In turn, undernutrition can negatively affect overall health, cognitive development, and school performance. Listen, you don't have to believe me. You don't have to listen to me, right? Go and look for yourself. Go look right now. Well, not right now, after the show. After the show, look at everything on the list that I was just telling you about. Go to the CDC website and look at the nutritional necessities of living. And also go to that spirituality website and look at, right, that list of things that may develop as a result of childhood trauma and how it will impact adult life. Look at those things. Look at those things. You don't have to believe me. I'm just directing you to the site. That's all I'm doing. And as a clinician, that's what I do. Because a person is provided with their own evidence. I can tell you all day long about what historics have about you in whatever documentation I may have. It's up to you to be able to say, hey, yeah, I did that. No, I didn't do that. I'm not sure about that one. Nah, they lied on that. I don't know where that came from. Right? Right? You can do all those things when I give you your historics. Something in there of all those things that I read about your historics may present to you as something that you want to work on. Because you can only work on what presents itself to you. When others present those issues to you, you automatically reject and resist it because you don't feel as though that that's the issue. So it's real important to understand self, you know, and look at what it is that you want to work on, right? Because I can tell you when you look at nutrition and a bad environment being factors for human development and growth, for cognitive development, when you look at those two things, that's a mix for disaster. So my environment sucks. I can't function in it. You want me to go to school and you want me to do well in school. But what we have in our cupboards to eat is slim pickings. So what am I really eating? And some mornings if I'm leaving out and don't even eat, right? Then that's a problem. So now, you get a phone call from the teacher about me acting up in class. You beat my ass because you're telling me I'm being disrespectful and bad, but you're not looking at the fact that you can't even feed me what I need to be healthy. So see, this is where my whole conservative, because I've been told I'm a conservative. I'm not a liberal. I'm more conservative than liberal, right? But this is where my conservatism, because you know, people make up words and just put isms and all that stuff. But this is where the conservative side of me comes forth, right? Because my belief is that we continue to have all this dialogue about failed school systems, right? Well, school systems have never been great anyway, especially public schools, especially in the city of Philadelphia. As far back as I can remember, what's his name? Ballas was I mean, we're talking about way back, but it's always been a challenge. But it wasn't a challenge in my home. See, that's the difference. It wasn't a challenge in my home. My mother made us sit down and practice and study and do our homework. She checked our homework. When she came in, she got off 11 o'clock at night. She'd get in 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. And if she checked the work, right, first of all, it better be on the table for her to check. That's the first thing, right? But she would check it, and if it wasn't right, she was dragging our behinds out of bed and having us correct it. So there's a process that begins at home. And some may talk about how unorthodox of a practice that was, but we got it done. And I carry that with me. I have a mindset and an attitude of getting it done. Getting it done, and getting it done right. Because I don't want to get my behind beat because I did it wrong, so that's a whole nother conditioning, right? Because if it was wrong, smack, pop, whip, whatever. So I don't like that feeling. So I take it to heart when I don't get it right, or when you tell me I don't get it right. I don't get it to your standard and your liking. Right? I take that to heart. Right? Because I give it all I got, because that's my conditioning as a child. That's my conditioning as a child. So that's why we moved away from the belt as a resolve. Spanking as a resolve. Because the reality of it is, it's been proven, it benefits the child in no capacity. That's why we have DCF here in Florida. That's why we have DHS up in Philly. As ineffective or effective those entities are found to be to your liking, is not even relevant. Belt, spanking, punching is no longer accepted because it produces nothing but fear. Fear and intimidation. That's all it does. It doesn't benefit the child at all. I can tell you, it doesn't. So right, wrong, or indifferent, many of us who came through the era of extension cords, sticks, whips, twigs, whatever. You know, many of us who came up in there are always referred to that when we see children who are acting poorly. Oh, well, back in the day, you know, I got my behind whooped, right? Yeah, I know. I had my behind whooped several times in class. I deserve some consequence, right? I deserve some consequence. A child deserves some consequence so they learn responsible living. But a child does not deserve to be whipped, to be beaten with a leather strap, you know, to be humiliated. That's not discipline. There's a difference between punishment and discipline. And I also have a video on my Daddy's Right Here YouTube educational station that talks about discipline versus punishment. Right? Because we hear the term over and over again, you know, that you're going to put on punishment. Now wait a minute, you just beat my ass, and you're going to put me on punishment, making me believe that they're two different things. They're not two different things. Discipline is a matter of showing the child that there are consequences for your behavior. Right? There's a learning curve in it. Punishment, there's no learning curve in it. None. At all. It's just hurt and pain. And in some cases, suffering. For years to come. And that's something that we have to begin to look at. That childhood trauma in regards to adult health and living and relationships is real. It isn't going anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not. We learn how to manage that. Right? And a lot of times when, you know, people get into arguments, you know who I am? I'm like, well, no. Do you know who you are? You want to ask me, do I know who you are? I don't know. Do you know? Because a lot of times, I mean, I've been in relationships with people. I just had this conversation recently with someone. I said, hey, I don't know you. I really don't. You know, we've been together, but I don't know you. Anybody who knows me, I'm transparent. I'll tell you about me. I'll tell you about my shortcomings. I'll tell you about my deficiencies. I don't have any problem with that. None. I will tell you about me. And sometimes you don't even have to ask. Because I'm not thin-skinned anymore. Right? I'm not thin-skinned anymore. You know, I know the truths about myself. But I'm very sensitive to being criticized for things that I don't do. Very sensitive to that. And that's childhood experience, because I was accused as a child of a lot of things by my parent that I didn't do and got beat for it. That conditioned me to go through those emotions every time I'm accused of something that I don't do. Listen, I've always told anybody who's been in my life, listen, I'm going to do enough shit on my own. And I don't need for you to, you know, attach things to me. I'm going to do enough. Trust me. Because I know me. I know I can get in those spaces. I know I can get to the point of intolerance. Right? I know I can be that way, depending on the space I'm in. Right? Sometimes I'm in that space. It's not right, wrong, or indifferent. Sometimes we all get in those spaces. But when our partners learn that we can be there in those kind of spaces, then it's the partner's responsibility to not fuel it. But if you have a partner whose own conditioning as a child tells them to confront certain things that they see, that they perceive as being in a certain manner, then you have an ongoing battle. And that's what we have in a lot of relationships today, and we don't talk about that. We keep thinking because we're grown, you know, especially for men. Men, I don't need nobody to tell me how to live my life. I can do this, I can do that. I don't need to hear none of this. You know, and men will go on and on and on and on because our conditioning as males is to get it done. Don't complain. Get it done. Fix it. Fix it. So, in my book, Why Are You My Ex, and the film, which will be coming out very soon because I'm finishing those things up. It's been a while, folks. I know I've been telling y'all that since 2013. But you know what? Good work takes time. Takes time. Right? So anyway, in the book, I talk about all of this stuff. Right? Because why are you my ex is the Y X chromosomes. Because there's a reason why we're attracted to particular people. It's a reason why we keep finding ourselves in the same kinds of relationships over and over again. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. Right? The neediness of a person is often exploited. Right? Because some are more needier than others. But it has to do with the childhood and neglect of that bonding relationship. Let me go here. So, Psychology Today. Here's an article by Andrea Brandt, B-R-A-N-D-T, a PhD. I don't know what the other letter is, the MFT. It's probably some kind of a therapist. Mindful Anger. 4 ways the pain of childhood trauma impacts us as adults. Okay, so whether you witnessed or experienced childhood violence, let me read that again. Whether you witnessed or experienced violence as a child, or your caretakers emotionally or physically neglected you, when you grow up in a traumatizing environment, you are likely to still show signs of that trauma as an adult. Children can make meaning out of the events they witness and the things that happen to them. And they create an internal map of how the world is. This meaning making helps them cope. But if children don't create a new internal map as they grow up, their old way of interpreting the world can damage their ability to function as adults. Now remember I was telling you about that? The mind. So when it refers here in this article, that's what it's talking about. The meaning making, that helps them cope. Like it's the things that map, the internal map. That's the mind. That's the mind. Right? It's the mind. Once you unstabilize the mind, right? You have to, destabilize the mind. Unstabilize. Once you destabilize the mind with the traumatic events, and the child goes without guidance, and I talked about this a few minutes back. The child can only live there, and the child living there without developing that meaning, they call it the meaning making, right? That doing something about that new internal map. If a child doesn't, regroup, right, and continues to live there, you have much of what you have today in the world. Because parents are ill-equipped. Parents are ill-equipped because they're not reading. I read all the time, all the time. It's important. Like I've been a clinician for over 20 years, right? I continue to study, and I always tell, clinicians, especially new clinicians coming in, listen, your academic studies are important. Stop just putting your books on the shelf and, believing because you passed the class that it's a wrap. No. You got to constantly sharpen that blade. Sharpen that blade. I'm fast on my feet. I'm quick with the thought. I'm quick in addressing things. Interventions happen like that. You can't take and go get your book and say, well, let me do this intervention. Now, Joe, hold on a minute. Can you just de-escalate for a second and read my book? No. You got to be popping. You got to be on top of that stuff when stuff happens. Because if you're not, right, you'll get slammed. And sometimes physically slammed, depending on what kind of circumstances you're faced with. So while there are many after effects of childhood emotional trauma, here we'll look at specifically 4 ways childhood emotional trauma impacts us as adults. Now remember, this is psychology.com, psychologytoday.com. This is right from this article. 4 ways the pain of childhood trauma impacts us as adults. Go to the site. Go to it. Oh, this is no endorsement whatsoever about of the magazine. I'm simply telling you there's sources that you can go to help you find some information to learn how to address some of the things about yourself. Because if you're not looking for solutions, you're not going to find any anyway. But if you're looking for solutions, I'm giving you a resource. I'm giving you a resource. So let's talk about the first one on this list. Number 1, the false self. As a childhood emotional trauma therapist, I'm reading from the article, I see many patients who carry childhood emotional wounds with them into adulthood. One of these wounds reveal themselves. One way these wounds reveal themselves is through the creation of a false self. Come on now, you with me? The creation of a false self. This is when you deviate from your natural order of development, when you deviate from your own hopes, dreams, and aspirations. You deviate from that to create this false self. Now you have an inflated perception. Hold on. As children, we want our parents to love us and take care of us. When our parents don't do this, we try to become the kind of child we think they'll love. Let me read that again because I want to make sure you're clear on what I just said. As children, we want our parents to love us and take care of us. Now remember, as children, a child, you can beat them and many times they'll come right back to you and be up under you, and you'll hold them. You'll hold, some of us will hold and, tell the child, about what they did and why they got a beating and so on and so forth, and how much mommy and daddy love you, or Uncle Frank or Aunt Dee or, whoever love you. And they'll tell you all those things, forgetting about the conditioning as well with the beating, and then hug, beating, hug, beating, hug, beating, hug, reinforces, I beat you, and that's a sign of love. But that's a whole nother discussion. So it's a matter of, though, but you want your parents to love you. Because when it hurts, mommy, daddy, it hurts, and and then you want to look at that because you think that they're the ones who're supposed to take care of you, right? When our parents don't do this, we try to find a way. Okay, so what can I do so mommy and daddy can hug me, so I can go out with them, so I can go sit in a chair or in their lap and watch TV and play with their nose and their ears and poke my fingers in their eyes and stuff like that. That's love to children, some children at particular ages. But what can I do to do that? I want to be a better child. I want my mommy and daddy to love me. Okay, I won't talk. I'll stop talking. If you tell me I ask too many questions, I'll stop talking. I don't talk to anybody. Not even the teacher. Because you said I talk too much. You told me to shut up. I'll shut up. Okay, I won't put my feet up in the chair. I like curling up and laying on the sofa like you do, but you said I put my feet in the chair. I'll put my feet on the floor. They can't reach the floor. I won't do that. What kind of child what do I need to be for mommy and daddy to love me? I want them to love me. Yeah. Burying feelings that might get in the way of us getting our needs met, we create a false self, the person we present to the world. It's like, so we're now this person that people are thinking we are, but who we're really not. Now, because that's not who we are. That's not who we are. It's not who we are. But they don't know that's not who we are. Oh, he's such a good child. Look, he just sits up straight. He doesn't talk. Not in a way. Look at my damn kids, little baby kids running all over the place. They're loud. I wish my children were like yours. Wish they were like yours. Do you? You don't even know mine. I don't even know mine. And then the comparisons begin to be made. This is a good child. Look at those children. And it reinforces the need for me to be that way. Because you hear what others are saying about their own damn children, and you hear all the good things that they're saying about me, and mommy and daddy are benefiting from it. So I'm going to be that way. Oh, yes, being a doctor, that's a good idea, doctor. Yeah, so they abandon their own ideas. The idea to be a cosmetologist, or the idea to be a environmental services person, those things go out the door. I mean, you know, because, you know, my Uncle Frank, you know, was a environmental specialist from as far back as I can remember. That was my first job. I was like, when you can get working papers at 13. Environmental specialist, it was work ethic. It didn't care about a job. Zero was zero. You ain't making no money. How you going to talk? How you going to take care of anything? Right? So the article goes on to say, when we bury our emotions, we lose touch with who we really are, because our feelings are an integral part of us. We live our lives terrified that if we let the mask drop, we'll no longer be cared for, loved, or accepted. You know, this is a real heavy piece for me because, and you know, when I perused the article earlier, that stood out for me because I started looking at my marriages. I started looking at how I'm so accommodating beyond necessity that I often feel violated and taken advantage of when it's not reciprocated of a sort, if that makes sense. Because it's important to me that if I'm loving you and I'm yielding to your shortcomings, that you should do the same with mine. Being a very talkative person, and you know, when things happen, I like to talk about them as opposed to stuffing them, because I've been there before, and I've had therapy to deal with those kind of things that I don't have to stuff. And I found myself back stuffing, because when I say things, because of how you internalize things, they turn into confrontations. And I don't want confrontation, I want you to love me. Therefore, I don't say things. But then when I get to the point of being fed up because I haven't been saying anything, then I'm saying something to you, and now you're making me feel like I don't have the right to say anything to you, that I should just let things go, that it's always about you, that, you know, and so therefore, you know, I go from being extremely accommodating to being passive. Because now it turns into passive aggressive, which is one of the other things on this list. But it changes, I've changed who I am in order to be with you, in order for you to stay with me, and at the end of the day, I find myself empty-handed. Not once, not twice, but more. Right? So I lose things along the way. Other than the relationship, I lose other things. I lose parts of myself. Because I strive to be that good man, that good husband to you, that good provider to you. I yield to all your shortcomings, but you take and you make sure you make mine like you just blow them up. Oh yeah, look at you. You know, but, and all the good things that I've done, that I'm doing, don't benefit, because your only focus is on like what I can do for you. And if I've yielded to things, you don't understand that yielding to one's shortcomings is a means of compromise that's necessary for any relationship to be successful. But people don't often see things from that perspective, right? Not when they're not trying to heal themselves. So their condition, their childhood condition, their own deficits become their reality. Their reality. Remember, because when these things happen, the world view of the child is formed from that perspective. And that world view, without the right guidance and redirection and reshaping of the internal mind map, the child will continue to live in a condition oblivious to who they really are. And when it's time for them to show up later in adult life, it is devastating. If they ever show up. So there's a lot that you have to begin to look at in terms of how you are guiding your children, right? The best way to uncover the authentic you underneath the false self is by talking to a therapist who specializes in childhood emotional trauma and can help you reconnect with your feelings and express your emotions in a way that makes you feel both safe and whole. I just told you the best way. I just told you, and that's one of the greatest deficits, specifically, as far as I know, in the black community. I can tell you, having 4 marriages, I can tell you how many times that I've been to marriage therapy to help. Because it's help that's needed, and sometimes people just don't realize you come into a relationship with your own idea, your own worldview, and you come into a relationship with someone else who has done the same, and then when you look at all these events and things that happen throughout the course of people's lives and what they're bringing to the table, other than those things that you say that you desire to have in a relationship, it's much more than that. And that's what my book and the film is going to be speaking to. Because we keep walking into, oh, she looks good, he looks good, he got this going on, he got a job, he made this kind of money, he dresses like this, he drives that, she drives this, he drives that. We get all caught up in all that. The sex is that's magnanimous, and you just look at all of these things and you be like, you're in a relationship with more than that. But so many are in a relationship with just those things that I listed. That they never even see themselves in the relationship with that person, because the person is not the relationship. The person is not the relationships. The things that satisfy the id are in that relationship. And it's almost like an out-of-body experience, because those things that I can do, I can provide for you. Even sex, those things are the relationship. And here I am, the spirit standing outside and looking at what the physical has been able to provide, and that's where you're happy. Because when it's time for you to sit down and connect with my spirit, it's like you don't know what to do. You don't know what to do. Because you're not connecting with the spirit. You're looking for satisfaction. Relationships are a part of the satisfying of the id, the ego, and or superego. Right? Most of the satisfaction sought in having a relationship for most is via the id. Especially those who have not been in any kind of therapy, those who have not had any kind of grounding. Right? I don't care what religion you're connected to, and how much you practice this and practice that, and how much you know the word of God, this, that, and the other. Okay, that's intellect. So you can regurgitate what you read. You can regurgitate what Pastor so-and-so, or what Minister so-and-so, or what Imam so-and-so said. Okay, so you can go along to get along. Remember, from childhood, you're used to doing that anyway. You know how to be the good child. So you're part of the congregation, and you're being a good congregation member, based on what you think others want you to be and see and do. And then when you deviate from that and they lash you, you feel terrible, because now the community sees you differently, because they have judged you when the word says judge not. But that's a whole nother discussion. But here you are again, rubber banding from childhood to adulthood because you find yourself in the same situation again. So now you've deviated again and going back to somebody else's course of action as your means of life. I'm sorry, did I lose you on that one? Didn't mean to. Didn't mean to. But at the end of the day, this is about I need to feel safe and whole. And if you liking me and me thinking that you like me and loving me because of your actions changing toward me because I've changed the way I do things to appease you, I'm happy. I feel safe. I feel whole. You have to reconnect with your feelings. And that's what therapy allows you to do. And again, many, especially black folks, don't use therapy. Don't at all. I'll be the first to go. And as a therapist, I learned early on in my associates, my undergrad program, like, yo, listen, you want to be a good therapist? Go to therapy yourself so you can experience it, so you can have an understanding of what it encompasses, right? And I did that. Wow, listen, we're only on number 1 on that list, and we're almost at the hour. Again, Side Spot Live right now is just a 1-hour show. I'm going to change that advertisement because that was when I was doing a Blog Talk Radio. I'm not doing Blog Talk Radio anymore. Right now I'm just doing Twitter Live, Facebook Live, and this is also a recorded session on my Canon camera. So if you kind of see me looking up, and I'm actually looking at 3 cameras. I'm looking at a camera on a laptop, I'm looking at my Canon camera, I'm looking at my phone for Twitter. So I kind of look at, try to make sure I'm making eye contact with the cameras to some degree. So it's a 1-hour show right now until I get back to the structure of my studio environment. I still don't have my studio umbrellas and other equipment here. They're still in storage up in Central Florida. So I have to get those things down here. So I can put my music back in, and we can do the break, and we can do other kind of stuff. So I can put my DJ skills and stuff like that into play. But listen, it's been great having you. It's great being back. After being off for about 4 or 5 months from doing this live show, and it was a break for me to get to my book and my film and put some more content there, but to also move through some challenges that I've had over the past year or two with the move and some other things that have transpired in my life. So I'm getting back to that happy place again, that self, that safe place. I'm getting myself back to that safe place, again, and and it feels good. So I thank you as always for joining in and for believing that you can join into the show and maybe get some information, even if you can't use for yourself, that maybe you can take and give to someone else. Even if you can just direct them to the websites that I refer to, or my daddy's right here, YouTube educational station. If you just Google Sabir Alim, right, the first 2 to 3 pages, you'll see all of my content, and just click on it, man. Just click on it, and the information is there. I think that hey, this helps me. I didn't mean to think, I was thinking something else at the same time, but no, it helps me. When I do these shows, based on, what I've learned, and I continue to learn when interacting with others, clinically, professionally, in a professional environment at all, because I, have the responsibility of overseeing quality of care. But I look at myself first, and I always tell people, use yourself as the first line of thought when you're talking about change and helping somebody and life's challenges. Use yourself as the first line of thought. How do you change? How did you get to the point of going to school? You just tell people to go to school. How did you get to the point of going to school? What did you do? What influenced that? And people lose sight of that. It's not always that easy. It's not always that easy. We all have our own course of action, right? And no matter which course we travel, it's like all roads kind of lead together and everybody winds up the same place, right? But at your time.